Hi, good afternoon. This is Michael Harris coming at you again with our next case study, which was communication failures. I found this one to be a very funny, but oh so true type of case study that I see all too often. Um, so we'll just go into the questions because the questions itself will explain what the whole case study was about. And the first question was, how important are communication skills in project management? So as I look at it, this case presents itself as classic isolationism. We had a gentleman by the name of Herb who has a PhD in engineering. He was selected to be the project manager on this particular project, and he was also considered a subject matter expert due to his education and his experience as far as the company goes. He had a team that was comprised of 14 people, and then they all came from within the company, but four of them would be the supervisors or his immediate go-to team uh, that were responsible for the other 10 employees, and he would communicate with them regularly. So that was his staff. um, so in the first 2 months of the project, things were going great. It seems like they were firing on all cylinders, and that life was going good. Like I said, it also appeared that they were communicating effectively, and everything was going good with the stakeholders, the employees, no problems, no issues. And from the outside looking in, it looked like a great matchup since everyone looked willing to come outside of their shells, quote unquote, and work together. So herein lies the question, uh, the answer to that question. Communication skill sets are very important to a project manager, as well as anything in life. Just because you may work alongside others in different capacities, does that mean or does not mean that you can effectively communicate on the same level when having to work together as a team. So, like I say, you may be in your shell, in your little area, and your area is running good. You have maybe a staff of two or three people, and they know all your idiosyncrasies and they know everything that they need to do because y'all work together. And every other little section may have those great nuances, but then all of a sudden, when you bring the best of the best together, there can be issues in communication. So, as an example, I will use the Army, of course, and we have this course called the Leader Reaction Course, also known as the LRC. Hopefully, you're familiar with it, but the purpose of this course, which is outside, is to get you and your team of, say, 3 to 4 people to navigate an obstacle course carrying and using limited items that are supplied. The purpose of this is to get leaders to think and work in a cohesive manner. So, no task is run twice, so that the leader's skill sets in planning, organizing, decision making, communication, and supervising can be evaluated as it pertains to a leader's specific skill sets. Now, there are several stresses that are placed upon the leader, like the team can't touch any of the painted walls that are red. You can't get on the catwalk. You can't step into the water. There are so many different variances that you cannot do, and you have to negotiate these obstacles without, quote unquote, killing yourself. Now, you're working under time constraints as well. You have 2 minutes for the leader to do a recon of the obstacle, and then you have 12 minutes to complete the task. Now, the only equipment, once again, that may be used is what is provided there on the site. And you have various things that you have to try to carry over, such as a barrel, a toolbox. It's a very challenging course, and it requires a lot of thought, a lot of communication, a lot of teamwork, and most importantly, a lot of trust. Okay. So you have a bunch of observers around, which is the rest of your the crew, the rest of the company or whatever that's there, and their goal is to try to create stress and distractions and to cause confusion and chaos to get your team out of focus. So it's a big trash talking event, and you're trying to negotiate things, and people's pucker factor can get kind of high at some point in time. But so the purpose that I bring this up is that I've taken my leaders, such as the first sergeants, the company commanders, some platoon sergeants, squad leaders, to this course because as leaders, yeah, they can dictate to their subordinates what they want them to do. And those are those little isolated groups where the platoon sergeant can make some things happen, squad leader can make some things happen, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. But when you bring all those leaders together, can they communicate and work effectively together versus dictating to what they want done? Now they have to come together and work together and put their egos aside just long enough to accomplish that mission. So the bottom line is if the communication is done effectively, then everyone will survive the course and there will be no quote unquote loss of life encountered in this scenario. All right. So those are fun things that we do in the military uh, to challenge communication skills, trust, all those types of things, interpersonal relationships. Um, so the question was asked, was Herb the right person to be assigned as the PM? Well, I could say, well, based on the pool of people that they had or that they've identified in the case study, I guess I could say yes. Um, he was educated in my uh, three areas that I like to use. We'll just say he was educated in two out of the three important areas. He was technically educated. He knew he was a subject matter expert. He had an education. He had a degree. Being a PhD, he has some critical thinking skill sets that he could always refer back to. Um, but of the third, he appeared to lack effective communication skills. And I think that is because he worked alone and he was not with any particular type of group. He seemed to be a loner out of the group, and that's why he could get things done. He didn't have to rely on anybody. Um, so, with that being said, there was this huge breakdown in several areas, some that pertain to the actual project, while there was some that did not pertain to the project at all. And that's why I say this is the fun part of the case study. Um, Although Herb was selected as the project manager for the job by virtue of his education and apparent subject matter expertise skills, in my opinion, he lacked effective communication with group attributes. As for encoding, decoding, and feedback, he lacked the subject matter expertise on these three. It would have been simple enough to give each of his four players a notebook to write on rather than try to remember everything. I use in the military, I used to give my soldiers a little green notepad that was issued to us, and I'd make them put it in the top right cargo pocket of their uniform. And I always made sure that they had something to write with and to write on. And that was a mandatory inspectable item. As a leader, you should always have something to write with and something to write on anytime you go anywhere. But which goes along to say that a short pencil is better than a long memory any day. Um, so that was one of the biggest things that was lacking right there. Herb should have wrote everything down so he could reference it later, and so should his other team members, the other four players, the key players in that. They should have had something to write down, and that could have eliminated a lot of communication errors right there. So Alice comes in. I call her the drama queen in this instance. She comes in with something that doesn't necessarily pertain to this project at all. She was a seasoned veteran with the company and had been there longer than Herb. Okay, but she had only been on Herb's team for a few weeks, and came in one Monday morning and told him, "Hey, Herb, guess what? I'm being considered for promotion," and that announcement would be made soon. I'm sure he probably said, "Hey, congratulations, good for you." Um, whatever. They may have shared a couple things. What is it that you're going to do? This, that, or the other. But it appears, that's wonderful. But how is it Herb's fault that he didn't submit a letter of recommendation? Because she came into his office and said, "Hey, you didn't submit a letter of recommendation, so I didn't get the job." You know, he was not asked to do one. And it also appears that from the department of which he came from, maybe that's not a requirement. And, it was her fault because she assumed that he understood that if she's being put in for uh, a recommendation for uh, a promotion, that he needed to do some sort of letter of recommendation. Uh, I have never even seen that before, unless someone actually articulated that to me. If you were to come up to me and say, "Hey, Mike, I'm being considered for promotion," my response to you would be, "Hey, that's great. Good luck. Who's the competition? Whatever. If whatever small talk." But unless you suggest to me that I write you a letter of recommendation to help uh, better your chances of securing that promotion, then I won't do that. Because you didn't ask me. So she assumed that, and that's her fault for not asking for what she needed. And if she thought that he may have either misunderstood or it didn't come in, she should have followed up with him to verify and validate that he actually did write that letter of recommendation. So that's her fault. That's nothing on her right there, and it has nothing to do with that project. She just got her feelings hurt. Sorry. So Herb is getting frustrated. He wants to lock the doors, and because he's superstitious because it's Friday the 13th. But the show must go on. So in comes Bob into Herb's office, and he is upset that the time and temperature parameters of the project have been changed. Um, this is something that Bob's crew have been doing for years, and that's the only thing. It's always been done this way. That's that old saying, "Well, we've always done it this way. We've always done it this way." Okay. So uh, Bob comes in and he tells Herb uh, that he understood that Herb came and told some of his engineers that this would be the new way of doing things. We're going to check it here. We're going to drop the temperature parameters down to this level, so on and so forth. But the people that he told, subsequently, they forgot that they were told to do it, and it didn't happen. So, even though y'all are asking me a question, my question is, why was Bob not at that meeting? And if he wasn't there for a legitimate reason, whoever stood in for him, why did they not articulate Herb's desires and wishes at the next available time that they were able to come across Bob? Say, "Hey, this is the notes. This is what Herb wants us to do from here on out, blah, 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 blah." And they could have had that discussion in a timely manner and eliminate the problem for when it arose at the end when they needed those charts to be done. Um, and also, why did Bob not inquire of any changes so that he could make sure his team was in compliance? As a leader, if you know that you have a meeting on the same day every week, every month, whatever, and you're not going to be there, and you put somebody, you're second in charge, you put them in charge, and they go to the meeting, you want to come back and ask them, "Hey, what happened in the meeting?" All right. And then that person will tell you this, that, or the other. And if you disagree, then you go back to the person who initiated the meeting and you say, "Hey, I understand, blah, 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 and I have X, Y, and Z concerns." That never transpired. So that's a classic breakdown. And I give that 33 and a third percent blame. I give Herb the blame for not actually going back to follow up with Bob when he came back from the meeting. I give Bob the blame for not going back and following up with Herb from the meeting. And then I give the person who stood in or the other engineers that were in that meeting, they get a share of the blame for not articulating back to their immediate supervisor what the new wishes and new concerns were. So that's a classic breakdown, and that happens almost in every entity of every organization. So, you know, it's just amazing how that happens. So now Bob's really thinking about locking his door so he could enjoy some lunch. Turn the lights out, and but before he could do that, bam! Here comes Frank and Betty, and they come in with this double team approach initially uh, towards Herb, and Frank, probably very upset, comes in and says, "Hey, it appears that we're about a year out from manufacturing, and we have to have what I interpret as the shop drawings that need to be approved for whatever fixtures, furniture, equipment, whatever it is that is in this package. They need to have them approved because they're a year out, and they want to make sure that everything is on point. And if anytime after this year out, if they don't have their stuff together, then they're going to incur uh, a longer waiting period because manufacturing may take that long for that. So he's going after Herb a little bit, and then so Betty chimes in. She goes, "Well, wait. You know, um, after that meeting, Herb told me to go and look for some alternative materials, see if I can find it out there on the market a little bit cheaper." So she went and found some vendors who could produce the same quality for a little bit cheaper. And she took it upon herself to order it. But, classic yet again, she didn't tell anybody what she was going to do. She assumed that, hey, he said, go look for something. She found it and she just went on and bought it. That's not even her job to do that. Or at least that's what Herb wanted. He didn't tell her to go and do it. He said, I just merely wanted you to go find something so you can bring me the cost. I can look at it. I can do a comparison for quality and make sure that it's within spec. And then I can make the decision as to whether or not I'm going to go with product A or product B. That didn't happen. She took the bull by the horns and she made a unauthorized purchase, basically, and so now they're back to this. They have to go back and revamp that and try to figure that out. And then she goes back and say, well, this is what we did at the other company. And that's a lot of problem. That presents a problem in itself because a lot of people say that, well, at my last company, we did this, we did that, and that might be the reason that you're no longer with that last company. So when there's uncertainty, things that you did at the last company, you can articulate it to everybody and say, hey, this is what we did, but you still need to find the climate and the culture of the current company in which you work at and do it according to their policies and principles, their standard operating procedures, not your own. So, um, so like I said, the problems here are seen all too often in many work environments. Excuse me. It is so important that when you have been working independently for periods of time and you have been successful in doing so and managing your own little group of people, that when you branch out and you start with a new team, that you all come together and make sure that everything is clear as mud, right? I make it an effort to give everyone that little green notebook that the Army issues or has available to us. And I make them put it in their pocket and have it available at all times. But I also make sure to let everyone know that I'm not trying to insult anyone's intelligence, but I need them to write things down for clarity. And I also do a little check on learning to validate the things that I said because I do not want them to walk away from me and assume that this is what I said. You wrote it down, and I do a random thing. Hey, what did I just say? Right? Tell me what you just wrote down. You want me to go to the moon? Okay, on this car, whatever. I want to make sure that everything I said is what you wrote down, and that you understand what you have written. So, in closing, I would say that this was a nice case study. This, like I said, this one is one of the ones that hits home a lot because this is one that occurs all too often in many environments. Even in the surgical department, we have it all the time. They don't communicate up there either, and it frustrates me with cases. You know, you open up a room, you prepare for surgery for a person who's going to have a hernia repair, and you open up everything, and then you come out and you find that the patient's having his toenail removed, and you've got all this other stuff. So now you have to, dispose of it, and that costs dollars. It may cost $20,000 to have a hernia repair, but it may only cost $3,000 to have your toenail removed. So you got to throw away $17,000 worth of equipment, just like that. So, with that being said, it's a nice day outside. Um, Hope everybody enjoys this little presentation of this case study, and I wish everybody a great day.